Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Martyn Element. He's a Vancouver marketing and corporate developer who also focuses on advising people on how to source and pursue new business ventures. Welcome back to the show, Martyn.
Hello, Jim. And advising companies that are already very much entrenched in business. Welcome to all of you.
Martyn, I know we try to keep politics out of the show, but you know, money and politics are always closely entwined together, and one without the other would be a strange bed partner. Well,
you know, I just said to Jim that, you know, I think listeners well know that one of my particular favorites, and Bible perhaps isn't the right word, but something I really enjoy reading, especially at the weekend, is the Financial Times Weekend Edition. And I just turned over the whole section of the main section of that newspaper, and more than 3/4 of it is politically related. But it is the Financial Times, but it's all political. You know, whether it be North Korea letting off more powerful nuclear bombs, and, you know, whether the surrounding areas, as Mr. Trump is suggesting, should be armed. And then, of course, there's the whole thing about Mr. Trump and his ideas of building the wall, and the ranchers in Arizona are welcoming, a lot of them are welcoming the idea of a wall because they're tired of being involved in that whole illegal immigrant and all the things related to that with the drugs. And so it's all intertwined. And why, you know, at this stage of the American election, I think it's only to be expected that the drum is beating that much harder given the time of where we're at. And, you know, you've got the BRICS, also the naysayers, and the facts and figures are that Britain would appear to be doing remarkably well at the moment. Some would argue the best it's done in a long, long time. Meanwhile, you've got the scaremongers, particularly America, the current President Obama, and of course the head of Japan. Actually, the Japanese threatening about potentially closing their car manufacturing in Great Britain, which is their main source of manufacturing for the European market. And other people suggesting that you're not going to read an awful lot of these positive stories in some of the main media, like The Guardian or even the Financial Times for that matter. I don't know whether I agree with that or disagree, but to say there's still some humongous splits is understatement. Now the Prime Minister of Britain is being accused that she doesn't have a firm plan. I think one of the reasons for her, whether she has a firm plan or not, is that this whole thing has really happened in relative terms very, very, very quickly. And, you know, things have to be put through right. And, you know, if you go and do something too quick a knee-jerk reaction, we all know what happens more often than not with those sorts of reactions in our own lives. So it's a mess is what it is, Jim. And the markets, whether it be bonds or any, the stock markets themselves, they all took a hammering at the end of this week. Now, what was that? That was the markets in general taking a breather, the markets not liking the upheaval of the EU and BRICS and one or two other things going on. You know, it was, I think that it's a very, very, very busy time, and even gold took it on the nose a little bit at the end of the week, although a lot of the gold bugs will tell you, they say, listen, it's just a breather, gold is going to be going higher, a lot higher, and I can tell you that the people that put these gold deals and make these gold companies and run these gold companies, I can tell you, it might not be in the media, it might not be written up yet in any reports, but the fever pitch behind the scenes on the stage of gold at the moment is just that, fever pitch of people beginning to position or offering bids on companies and It's as busy as it's ever been. Next week is the Denver Gold Show. I think the numbers will show that it's the best, highest attended show in many, many years. Friends of mine are attending. They've had a terrible time getting a hotel. And it's more evidence that gold interest is so extremely high. A business associate of mine has been down all week in Argentina. He happened to be there when there was a conference on. He says obviously it wasn't a well-publicized conference, but it was as busy as crazy. And he said the action on the floor of the conference was a feeding frenzy, is what he called it, from people trying to do transactions in that space, in the lithium space. And a friend of mine out of Australia has just done what is said to be the largest, richest lithium play in Argentina. I haven't talked to my friend directly. I will be tonight, all being well, if I can find him. Although I'm saying tonight, and I think he's holidaying somewhere in Europe, but I hopefully will be able to find him through my main broker friend in Sydney, Australia, later this afternoon. So it's exciting. You know, what do you really think, Martyn? Well, listeners, it's exciting. It's exciting after so many years of just, you know, drawl and not much going on. Now all of a sudden, here we are in September, and yes, it's arrived, and it's very, very busy. Very, very busy. And as I said before on my last broadcast, gold doesn't have a calendar. It doesn't know that it's the middle of September. But, you know, it does have its own way of, it's almost like a breathing entity of up and down in value. And at the moment, it seems to be just holding its own here at one specific price. But there's so much energy, I think, and undercurrent. People think that's only going to be temporary before it goes a lot higher again. But only time will see whether that is right or wrong. And meanwhile, there's a little company that we mentioned quite a bit a few months ago, changing gears completely here from subject matter, a little company called Vitality, which is it's from the 50s, I think it's been around. It's been around over 75 years. British Columbia vitamin company, and they've come out with a new product called Power Iron, or Power Iron, and it is just doing so well and in the marketplace. They are attending a show in Toronto this next week, and there's a little company that is beginning to really do some big things. It's been announced that it's been taken on by the largest distributor of its kind in Canada, and they have currently 300 outlets, and I wouldn't be at all surprised before Christmas that number is substantially higher, very, very much. I'm not going to put a number on it, but when you've got the sales force of the people that are taking on the product, they appear to like the product. I saw the catalog on Friday, and it's got a whole page on this Power Iron, which is being voted as one of the products of this year at the show. It was the same show, I think, that vegetable milk was voted in, was in the final last year. I don't think it won, but it was in the final. It did win something, because I remember seeing on the television in Toronto when he was being interviewed. He is particularly active. He's in the process. It's been, I think, announced publicly. He has been raising many, many, many more millions of dollars for vegetable milk, and the money is being raised to go into the American market, and it's to go into China eventually as well. But, you know, he's had tremendous success at raising money, but unfortunately the stock hasn't done fantastically well. But sometimes that happens with these deals. But the key is being able to raise the money, not just to stay in the game, but also to expand. So, you know, if he's able to use that money well, then I think we'll see. I don't think it's registered VGI, but I think it's actually it is called Garden. It's called Garden Fresh, is what it's called as a company. So I think there's lots of action out there other than the resource side of things, Jim. There's lots going on here in the fall of 2016.
We'll have more with Martyn Element right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Martyn Element. Martyn, one of the biggest deals in sports took place last week with Formula One being bought by Liberty Media. All in, it's worth about $8 billion. And they said it reaches the exact audience that they want, rich people.
It certainly does that, doesn't it? Although I'm sure a lot of people that like to dream watch it and they're not rich too, that love to watch Formula One. My little boys, particularly my eldest boy, isn't old enough to know what rich or poor means, but he loves watching those cars, I tell you. So, no, I think it's a fascinating sport. I had a taste of it in a big way about 10 years ago. I was very involved in a company that tried to set itself up against Formula One. It's called A1 Racing. It didn't work. It was a pretty tall order what it was trying to do, but it was exciting times. I went to some big races. I've been to some through that particular company. I attended some of the biggest race circuits in the world, including Shanghai, Silverstone or Brands Hatch, I think it was at. Went to the big course in Holland as well. And it's an exciting space, and we've discussed it a lot, I think, on the air, because it is such a mind, all-encompassing sport. And, Bernie's at an age, although he carries on with his beautiful wife and his own lifestyle, I think he's in his early 80s, Jim. So it's not perhaps surprising that, there comes a time. Plus, he's been getting an awful lot of things going on, I think, with a big lawsuit that was put against him the last time he sold a piece of the company. So it takes its toll, and so he's decided to move on. And I just finished reading that book I mentioned, A Prince Among Stones. I just finished reading the book, and it really, it didn't get very good critical acclaim, because the Prince, Lowenstein, he spends a lot of time on his family tree and his background and those sorts of things, rather than what people really want to read about his relationship with the biggest rock and roll band in the world. But the one thing that did come out is that at the very end, Rupert himself was getting on in years and was probably 73 or 74 years of age, and he can only tour and do those things himself, and he tried to do what a lot of the big rock and roll stars have done in the last decade, where these big corporations, mainly out of New York, from what I can see, were offering these stars a huge balloon payment for all of their earnings, for the next so many years from here on in, and the amount of money, like buying them as an entity almost and putting them into a limited partnership sort of arrangement. And the numbers were staggering. I think David Bowie actually did it, and so did some other big ones as well. And the Rolling Stones, in the book, it said that they would have, if they'd done the deal, it would have been as much money as they already had in, it would make them exactly double what they were worth as individuals. And of course, it was also would have been a sayonara for Rupert, but the Stones refused to do the deal, and themselves, the boys, and the rest is history. Rupert unfortunately died about 2 years after that, but he was trying to get an exit. But it never ceases to surprise me that we all invest in different things like gold, metals, wind power. There's friends of mine in the city at the moment. There's two separate groups, and they're both trying to finance the cellular phone towers throughout Colombia as a country. There's two separate groups, and once you get the towers up, they become very, very profitable potentially. And a lot of it's to do, the other thing the argument is, a lot of criticism is coming up for the satellites. In our lifetime, we've all seen satellites go up in very large numbers, and we take for granted satellites, and we take for granted GPS. However, the cell phone towers are so many times more accurate and so many more times better, because what's beginning to happen, unfortunately, it sounds like a strange thing to say, but these satellites are getting so prolific up there that they're actually crashing and causing problems. And getting them up there is a trial and error as well recently, unfortunately, because they've been cutting corners with Elon Musk and his company, of course. But towers are still popular. Towers are still, and I remember the deal that I was involved in called Cell Lock back at the end of the last century that went from nothing to way up into the huge dollars because it was using cell phone location, using the towers as location. So, ever-changing world. It's not just about business deals. It's about big things like racing cars. And, of course, at the weekend, we've just had the biggest, I think, watched Premier League game in history, they said. Although I would have thought Liverpool and Man U would have had that record. But they said that Man City and Man U played, which I know is very boring for a lot of listeners, particularly you ladies. But it was the numbers were staggering of viewership. And because the numbers are so unbelievably big, of course, the advertising dollars and the dollars involved in soccer and Premier League soccer go into, any time now we're going to be talking trillions, but right now we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's just exciting that those things come into play. And obviously there's investment involved with that. And obviously there's vehicles out there that, the average person can take a piece if he thinks that where it's going to get bigger and can take a play with that. But listeners, I might say those things, but those rules and regulations and those investment wealth managers and these people that are proficient in their business, they are there because they're needed. And don't kid yourself. Don't try and play these things on your own because unfortunately you'll get hurt. And if you do play the speculative ones, just the same as I was reading all the paperwork associated with these latest investments that can be done with the subscription form, and there's a disclaimer now, and it says, please be aware, any money you are putting in this speculative investment, you should be prepared to lose everything. And that's not a bad warning. I mean, that is what it is. But people still want to play, and I understand that, just the same as they play in unbelievable numbers down at the casinos. I mean, a lot bigger than probably what's being put into the junior stock market. But it is what it is, and we work with it, and we have a lot of fun, and it's an exciting time, Jim. Very exciting time to be in the business after 4 or 5 years of not very much going on.
And in the past couple of weeks, we've seen something that you would never believe, a country turning down $13 billion in taxes. The European Union says that's what Apple owes Ireland, $13 billion in taxes. And Ireland is saying, no, we don't want it. We don't want to upset the apple cart because 140,000 people have jobs because of high tech, and we don't want to chase high tech away.
Well, it makes for a very interesting scenario because if you were a person leaning on the side of the BritX, you'd say that's the EU panicking, and that's the EU trying to collect money, and that is the root of a lot of the problems. And I think the thing to think about with that situation is, Jim, if Apple pays, and if that money is collected, that is going to open a real, as you're quite right what you've just said, a real Pandora's box, because tech was the big gainer from that, and tech companies. But you can imagine the exodus and the problems and the infighting from the ramifications. Well, the infighting's there now as I'm speaking to you. But, I mean, the ramifications are just going to be humongous. And I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago that Britain was very quick to say, well, we're open for business and we'd love to do a deal with you. Apple, bit of a cheeky overture there. But it's a symptom of a bigger problem. I think I've really been very pro-EU since this whole thing came about because, being from the Liverpool area and going to Dublin in the mid-50s and late 50s, in my lifetime, I've seen the evidence of what the EU can do for these places, and that's the good things it can do, like billions and billions of dollars to restore, these cities back to become tourists, to become people going there in droves because it's so beautiful now, and the rivers have been cleaned, and the sewerages have all been fixed up, and the buildings have been fixed up. And that was EU. It wasn't Britain, and it wasn't Ireland that did that. I'm sure they had some contribution, but the big money to do it was because they were members of the EU. So, playing the devil's advocate there, there's a lot of good things that have come out of all that, but I think that whole argument with the monies is a bit naughty. It's a bit like you paying your taxes for the last 10 years or whatever, and then the income tax people coming back to you and saying, well, we don't like the way that you structured yourself tax-wise. And you say, excuse me? Well, we think that the fact that you did this and you did that, I know it was within the law. I know you did everything legally for the last 10 years on paying your taxes, but we've changed our minds. We don't think we'd like to collect on that monies after all, and we don't think it's right the way that you've done this over the. I mean, it's like it's retroactive. It's going back. It's not. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how that one works out. But you boil it back down to your own principles. You would not be happy if you were Apple right now. And by the way, you look into Apple's world, it's a tremendous amount of money, but it is, but it isn't when you look at Apple's monies. But it's the principle, and you say, Jim, it would do a lot of damage to Ireland, and be interesting to see if it affects their membership of the EU and going forward. I haven't read that or seen that anywhere in a written form, but it's bound to start being asked as we speak, Jim, as we speak.
Martyn, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, listeners, and I wondered whether it was going to be really busy, and it is, and it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope we can talk in some. I like to use, this financing's been announced, or I'm aware of this company, and at the moment I think it's all formulating, and I think in the next 2 or 3 weeks we could see some of those proposals and things going on behind the scenes becoming about something we can talk about, and I look forward to that and explaining my interpretation of what it will mean to the marketplace.
My guest has been Martyn Element. He's a Vancouver marketing and corporate advisor. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.